Hi, I'm Tyler Van Haren. I'm an engineer here at Statsig, and today we're going to be talking about diagnostics. This is a surface that actually exists for both experiments and gates, and is a way to sort of measure the health of this experiment or gate that is running live and in production. Is there anything I should be worried about this experiment? Especially as an engineer, this is sort of the implementation side is one thing that always comes to mind. Do we need to go change something in code? This is how you can answer those questions. And so when you go to that experiment or gate, there's actually a tab called Diagnostics, and that'll have a few tools in it. It has the exposure stream where you can actually see, hey, this person checked this gate or experiment, they got back this value. We can actually see exactly why they got that value, when they got that value, what information we had about them at the time of them getting that value. All of that is there. You can also just generally see, hey, how many checks is this experiment getting? How many users are checking this experiment? How is that changing over time? Looking at a certain day, how does it vary throughout the day? And then there's this really interesting section called health checks, and that's where we, Statsig, put all of our things that we think you should know about your experiment so that you can feel comfortable it's running healthily, or if not, here's the things to look into and how you can actually go and look into those. So let's talk about exposure stream. This one is the most, again, as an engineer, I really like how tactile this one is. You can just go and see, yes, here are logs coming in roughly real time. Here's exactly when it came in. Here's what user it was evaluated for, which rule it got. There's a really cool toggle called non-production logs that'll actually let you see, hey, from our dev environments, these are the logs that we saw coming through our staging environments. Especially when I'm even setting up an experiment before I've even started it, before I've even given it to anyone else at the company, when it's just on my machine, I like to come here, go look at those non-production logs, make sure that I can see, just for my own sanity, yes, I checked this thing and then this log came through. Sort of really closes that loop for you. If you click on any of those, you actually get this really cool view of more detailed information that we obviously couldn't fit in that sort of overview table. The coolest pair of things that I'll call out here are user properties. So you can see here's all of the information that you had on that user object at time of evaluation, especially if you have some gate that's doing checks based on user properties. That's going to be really relevant towards that. But even for an experiment, you can see oh, this user was from this country, or I put this payment status on this user. Just gives you more context on who this user was, or at least as far as your system knows who this user was. And then you'll actually see the reason. This will be why we gave the response that we gave when you called get experiment. So common ones here are network. This is our server just told you, hey, use this one. Cache is one that'll also come up here pretty commonly, especially for client SDKs, where it'll be, maybe their internet was slow on this other session, but we already had a cached value for what they should get from a previous session, so we just used that. That'll be a pretty common reason you might see hey, I started this experiment and then I see an exposure come through that says not started yet, right? What gives? If I click through to that, I will often see that the evaluation timestamp might be from a session that was before the experiment started, or B, it was just a cached value. It was cached that the experiment hadn't started yet on that user's device. So reason is your friend if you're really trying to debug, why did this person get this behavior? And then you'll also just see some SDK details. For server SDKs, this will be, hey, this is when they initialized that. We'll often put things depending on exact setup, things like what client SDK key was used to evaluate this user. Especially if you're using more advanced features like target apps, things like that. That can help sort of clear up some mystique around why a given user might have saw a experience that they did. The check section is pretty straightforward. It really is just showing you, hey, you checked this experiment this many times. We do break it out by group. And then the cool toggle that you can actually do here is, it starts out on checks, just how many times it was checked. You can actually toggle over to the unit of the experiment to see how many unique unit of that experiment checked it. So, if I have some homepage that users go to many, many times during a session, I might, on one day, as one user, check your experiment 5 times, but I still only count as one user. So you'll often see that checks is considerably higher than users, depending on exactly where you're checking this experiment. But it can be useful for clearing up some confusion around, like, hey, like I'm seeing that this experiment is like balanced, but I'm checking it way more times for control. What gives? That can be something that you can sort of tease apart here, where it's like, oh, maybe like control is actually leading people to that surface more times. So more checks are coming through, but the actual users getting allocated is the same for each group. One other cool fact about this chart is that you can actually go to an hourly view if you're selecting only a single day. This is really helpful if I made some change to the experiment. Maybe I bumped the allocation up at some certain hour. I can actually see, like in sort of real time, yes, it spiked at 4 p.m. And then finally is health checks. This is our surface where, as Statsig, we can just give you information about your experiment. This is where I go to once I've started the experiment if I want to know, hey, are there things I need to do? Or am I just like waiting for it to collect enough data that I can actually go and make a final decision, right? So we'll see things here like if, for instance, the user IDs that we're checking don't line up with the user IDs that we have metrics for, right? That's actually a thing that I've seen a few times where someone is hashing them in one place but not in another. So like when we go to do that join, we would come up with nothing, so you wouldn't get any results. This is our way to sort of proactively flag that sort of thing. The other one that people are often interested in here, in addition to just like literally are checks coming through, are we getting checks from production, is SRM, sample ratio mismatch. This is, hey, I said that this experiment should be 50-50. Am I seeing that I'm getting 60% of users in control and 40% in test? There's a lot of reasons why that can happen that we sort of try to walk you through there, as well as give you tools to investigate why that might be, because there's, again, a number of reasons. But this is your way to either feel comfortable that it's not happening, or B, get your information on how to go and debug if it is. And yeah, those tools are actually a really powerful set of tools. Often when folks come along to our Slack channel, which I'll plug here, come join the Statsig community Slack, people will often come here and ask us questions, and all we really have to do is look at some of these diagnostics information, and then we can get a lot of answers. So it's a really, honestly, quite straightforward, but really, really powerful set of tools that hopefully makes you feel pretty empowered to go and make sure all of your experiments are running healthily. Thanks.